Taylor Swift is tying the knot at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, let that sink in for a moment. Not some cozy Rhode Island mansion. Not a hidden private estate in Nowhereville. Madison Square Garden. And if you have been obsessing over the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni disaster for the past 18 months like I have, you already know exactly why that venue made me gasp out loud when the headline hit. Because this is not just a wedding location, folks. This is, in my humble opinion, one of the pettiest, most calculated, most quietly savage moves I have seen from Taylor Swift in years. And honestly, I cannot even be mad about it. I am not a Taylor stan. Let me make that clear. But credit where credit is due, this woman just played four-dimensional chess while everyone else was stuck on checkers. And the one who got checkmated? Blake Lively. Let me rewind so this makes sense, because the whole Madison Square Garden thing is the only story here. Back in May 2025, before Taylor and Travis Kelce were even engaged, Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's lawyer, told TMZ something that became the most replayed line of this entire legal circus. He said, "If Blake Lively was really serious about testifying for the world to see, they should live stream her deposition at Madison Square Garden and donate the money to domestic violence survivors." That was the quote, and the headlines ran with it forever. Blake Lively deposition, Madison Square Garden over and over. And Blake was furious. Her team treated that comment like a war crime. When she went after sanctions for deposition misconduct in December 2025, that Madison Square Garden line got dragged out again and again. Her lawyers used it constantly in motions, in filings. Basically, anytime they wanted to remind Judge Lemon that the other side was turning a serious case into a freak show. Her rep, Leslie Sloan, put out a statement saying Miss Lively was looking forward to her deposition and that it should follow the same rules as any other witness, and that Baldoni's lawyer had tried to make the case a public spectacle at every turn, even proposing to sell tickets to a televised deposition at Madison Square Garden. That phrase lived rent-free in Blake's legal filings. It became almost a catchphrase for her team's whole victim narrative. So now, a full year and 2 months later, Taylor Swift, Blake Lively's ex-bestie, the woman whose name got dragged through this lawsuit, whose private texts were exposed, who endured subpoena drama and headline after headline chaining her to Blake's nightmare, is saying "I do" at Madison Square Garden. The exact same venue that Blake's own lawyers turned into a monument of her humiliation. Taylor is taking it back. And sorry, but there is no parallel universe where Taylor Swift, the queen of Easter eggs, the woman who plants clues in nail polish shades and elevator buttons, picked that arena by chance. She knows exactly what Madison Square Garden means in this story. Everyone who followed this case knows. And from my seat, this is the most blindingly obvious Easter egg she has ever dropped. And she has dropped some pretty obvious ones. Think about what this actually does. For over a year, SEO has lashed Taylor's name to Blake Lively, to this lawsuit, to Madison Square Garden, to all of it. Every search, every tag, every headline tangled together. And now when you search Taylor Swift Madison Square Garden, you will get wedding photos. You will get the dress, the vows, the celebration. She is literally overwriting the narrative. Madison Square Garden will forever mean Taylor's wedding, not Blake's deposition tantrum. That is not small-scale petty. That is architectural-level petty. She rebuilt the search results around her own happiness. And the wedding itself sounds massive. We are talking somewhere in the range of 12 to 400 guests, according to reports, which, when you think about it, makes sense. Travis is an NFL star. Taylor is the biggest musician on earth. Between the two of them, they probably know half of entertainment and sports combined. These two love a good party. This will be a spectacle. Now, I do suspect the actual legal marriage might happen quietly before the big event. Loads of celebrities do that. Sign the papers privately, then treat the wedding as the party. But either way, the vows are happening at the garden. And here is a detail I genuinely find interesting. Apparently, a huge reason they chose Madison Square Garden is privacy. The whole place locks down. You can drive straight in. No one sneaks in. No one gets a long lens photo of Taylor in her dress before she decides what to do with the pictures. Whether she sells them, drops them herself, or keeps them locked down like Blake and Ryan did with their wedding photos. And yes, Blake and Ryan never released theirs. That control stays entirely with Taylor. So on paper, it is a practical choice. Fortress-level security, total privacy, room for a guest list the size of a small town. But come on, you do not get to be Taylor Swift, the most strategic celebrity of her generation, and pretend the symbolism is a coincidence. This is a 2-for-1. Get married somewhere no one can photograph you, and simultaneously plant a flag on the exact spot your ex-best friend's legal team turned into their favorite talking point. It is the wedding equivalent of writing a diss track without saying a single name. Blake, you did not do your deposition at Madison Square Garden, but Taylor will say her vows there. And the timing makes it sting even more because remember, Taylor and Travis only got engaged in late summer or early fall of last year. There was all that speculation about Rhode Island, about her place there, even chatter about a venue being snatched from someone else. No one, and I mean no one, had Madison Square Garden on their bingo card. And then there is the part of this story I genuinely cannot get over, the invitation, or more accurately, the lack of one. Blake Lively is not invited to this wedding. And look, I know that sounds like the least surprising sentence ever spoken, but apparently it is news to some people, including, if certain reports are to be believed, Blake herself, because a headline crossed my feed claiming Blake is upset about the snub, that she feels like this whole thing is the ultimate diss aimed directly at her. And here is the part that made me laugh out loud. According to that reporting, it is not even the Madison Square Garden symbolism bothering her. It is the guest list. It is the fact that Taylor is inviting somewhere north of 1,000 people, 1,200, 1,400, some enormous number, and Blake still did not make the cut. Sit with that. Taylor Swift is throwing a wedding nearly the size of a Duggar family reunion, packed with friends of friends, people she sort of knows, people Travis played golf with once, someone's college roommate's cousin, and Blake Lively, the woman who once called Taylor her best friend, the woman whose kids Taylor wrote into song lyrics, is not on the list. That is not an oversight. You do not forget someone when you are inviting 1d400 people. That is a decision, a deliberate, intentional, underlined twice decision. And honestly, if you are Blake, I get why that version hurts more. Being left off an intimate 50-person guest list is one thing. Being left off a stadium guest list is a statement. But here is my question, and I have been asking it for months. Why is Blake surprised? Why is anyone surprised? These two have not been friends for a very long time. By my count, the last time Taylor and Blake actually spoke, like the two of them on the phone, human to human, was probably January 2025. Anything after that went through lawyers. February 2025, lawyers. That is not a friendship cooling off. That is a friendship in a coffin. We are now well over a year past that point. And Blake is reportedly still out here acting like there was a chance her name would appear on that invitation list. I have said this before, and I will say it again. Blake strikes me as the girl who simply does not accept the word no. She keeps circling, keeps waiting for Taylor to notice her, to say hi, to let her back in. And Taylor just keeps doing what Taylor does best when she is done with someone, ignoring them with the force of 1,000 suns. Now, some people held out hope because of Karlie Kloss. Remember, Karlie and Taylor had their own famous falling out years ago, and Karlie reportedly got an invite. So the logic went, well, if Karlie can come back from exile, maybe Blake can too. But no. Those situations are not the same thing. And I need people to understand why. Taylor's past feuds were frankly kind of dumb. The Katy Perry thing was about backup dancers. She got irritated at Olivia Rodrigo over song credits, even though in my opinion, Olivia did not actually steal anything, which is a little rich coming from Taylor considering she then turned around and made The Life of a Showgirl, an album where the whole title and theme feel lifted straight from a Vegas artist's playbook. But that is a rant for another day. The point is, those were petty pop girl squabbles, hurt feelings, bruised egos, the kind of thing that can thaw over time. What happened with Blake is a completely different beast. This was not a fight over backup dancers. This was Blake's lawsuit dragging Taylor, her name, her texts, her reputation, through a legal meat grinder for over a year. And when those text messages got dumped into the public record, It was genuinely jaw-dropping. We all saw them. We saw Taylor allegedly telling Blake she had just gotten uncanceled, the fastest uncancellation ever, literally. We saw the jokes about Justin Baldoni pulling out his tiny violin. Those messages did not just embarrass Blake. They exposed both of them. Because what came through in black and white was that these two operated exactly the same way. Calculated, strategic. The text made Taylor look fully on board with being Blake's so-called dragon, exactly like that infamous reference suggested. Taylor's PR machine had spent months insisting she wanted no part of any of it, that she was shocked and dismayed to be dragged in. And then the receipts showed someone who, at least early on, seemed very much in the loop. So let us not pretend Taylor's hands are spotless here, because they are not. Her team put out statements that, in hindsight, do not hold up well next to those texts. She played the "my privacy was violated" card hard, which takes some nerve when you remember the allegations on the other side. The claims about Janelle's phone, about data being taken and laughed over. There was a lot of victim playing going around, and frankly, both of these women have black belts in it. They are always the victim. Every story, every filing, every press cycle, somehow they are the wounded party. That is actually part of why I believe this friendship was never really a friendship in the first place. It was an arrangement. A mutually beneficial publicity alliance between two extremely image-conscious women who understood each other's game perfectly. Real friends listen to each other. Real friends tell each other hard truths. Real friends say, hey, maybe do not do this. What these two had was something closer to a strategic partnership. And strategic partnerships dissolve the second one. Party becomes a liability. And oh, did Blake become a liability? Because the moment that to me marks the true death of this friendship is not the lawsuit itself. It is what allegedly happened around the Super Bowl in early 2025. Blake reportedly was not invited to join Taylor's box. And according to the reporting that has floated around this case, Blake did not take that quietly. What allegedly happened next is the kind of thing you do not come back from. The kind of move that does not just end a friendship but salts the earth where it stood. What allegedly went down, per reporting around this case, is that Blake threatened to release a decade's worth of private text messages between her and Taylor unless Taylor put out a public statement of support. Let me say that again because it deserves a second pass. Blake Lively allegedly stared at her so-called best friend of a decade and basically said, "Support me in public or I torch everything." That is not a friend asking for help. That is a hostage situation. That is frankly the kind of move you pull on an enemy, not someone whose kids you have taken on vacation. And if even half that reporting is true, I fully understand why January 2025 was the final phone call. Because once someone shows you they are willing to weaponize your private chats, the relationship is not damaged. It is dead forever. There is no Carly Kloss redemption arc after that. No thawing. Just silence and attorneys. And here is the kicker. Blake did not even follow through on the threat the way you would expect. But the texts came out anyway, because Blake had a clear exit ramp before the great unsealing. She could have dropped the case before summary judgment. She could have walked away before everything under seal got dumped into public record. She chose not to. She kept going. And by doing so, she practically guaranteed that her private messages with Taylor, the uncancellation text, the tiny violin jokes, all of it, would end up splashed across every entertainment outlet on Earth. And guess what Taylor did to stop it? Nothing. She never intervened. She never fought to keep those texts sealed. She just stood back and let it burn. And I find that fascinating because to me, that silence was louder than any statement her publicist could have written. It was Taylor saying, "You made this mess. Now sit in it." Now, was Taylor loyal in all this? Absolutely not. And I am not going to pretend otherwise. When the heat got too high, Taylor did what Taylor has always done. She protected Taylor. She distanced herself. She deflected. She let her team paint her as an innocent bystander who got dragged into someone else's war. And she quietly stepped over Blake's corpse on her way out the door. That is ice cold. But it is also entirely predictable if you have watched this woman's career for more than 5 minutes. Self-preservation is her superpower. And here is the brutal, simple truth this whole saga has exposed. Taylor never needed Blake. Blake is desperate for Taylor. Think about it. Taylor's career did not lose an ounce of speed through any of this. She toured. She dropped music. She got engaged. And now she is throwing the wedding of the century. Blake, on the other hand, has spent the past year doing one long, screaming audition for relevance. The non-stop posting, the perfectly staged date nights with Ryan, desperately assuring everyone they are not broke, not divorcing, super happy. Thank you very much. The designer bags flaunted on social media while reportedly liens sit against that unfinished mansion. Legal bills pile up, and her own team fights over attorney fees. It is giving overcompensation. It is giving, please notice me. And the saddest part? So much of it still seems aimed at one specific audience member, the one who checked out 18 months ago. That is why this wedding venue hits the way it does. Taylor does not need to utter a single word. No interview, no lyric, no tabloid leak from a source. She simply books Madison Square Garden, the venue Brian Friedman dangled as a taunt, the venue Blake's lawyers whined about in filing after filing, the phrase that popped up in sanctions motions like a recurring nightmare, and lets the symbolism speak for itself. No live stream, no oath, no DV Survivor ticket sales, just vows, 2,400 guests, and one very loud empty chair that was never, ever going to be filled. Remember that line from the unsealed texts? The one about everyone thinking they were playing checkers while they were actually playing chess? Taylor just proved it applies to her friendships, too. This is the chess move. Steal back the venue, rewrite the search results, throw a party visible from outer space, and leave your former best friend outside the gates, nose pressed against the glass. By this time next year, no one will type Madison Square Garden into a search bar and find Blake Lively's deposition drama. They will find a wedding dress. They will find first dance footage. They will find joy, Taylor's joy, built directly on top of the very spot Blake's team tried to turn into their battlefield. That is not just winning. That is salting the earth and then planting a garden on it. And look, let me be honest about where I stand, because I am not on either of these women's teams. I think they are cut from the same cloth, calculated, image-obsessed, allergic to accountability, and forever playing the victim in their own versions of events. If you are going to be a schemer, fine, be a schemer. But at least own it. Neither of them does. The only difference is execution. Blake schemes loudly, messily, and leaves fingerprints everywhere. Taylor schemes in silence and lets venues, Easter eggs, and guest lists do the talking for her. One of them is currently drowning in legal fees and desperate Instagram posts. The other is about to walk down the aisle inside the most famous arena on Earth. You do not have to like Taylor Swift, I certainly do not, to look at this and admit the obvious. This round, this very petty, very deliberate, very Madison Square Garden-shaped round, goes to Taylor decisively. And something tells me Blake knows it too, which is probably why that headline about her being upset exists in the first place. Anyway, that is where my head is at. Drop your take in the comments. Is this an Easter egg, a coincidence, or the single most expensive diss track in wedding history? Because I already know exactly where I landed.